My wife made a new female friend after we moved. Now she's always at her place, comes home late, and says I'm crazy for not trusting them. But I found her friend's smartwatch in our bedroom. My wife swears nothing happened, but I don't know what to believe. I am 30, and I have been married to my wife, Jessica, 28, for 3 years. About a year ago, we moved to a new city because I was offered a promotion. Jessica was hesitant at first, but soon came around to the idea. Since arriving in the city, we have both been busy with work and have struggled to make new friends. Around 4 months and Jessica told me she had met a new friend, Jane, 29, and they had a lot in common. I was happy for her, and we planned a double date with Jane and her husband a few weeks later. At the first dinner, we started to make the usual small talk, but when I tried to engage with Jane, she seemed cold and dismissive. For the rest of the night, I was left to speak to the husband while my wife and Jane were deep in conversation. Every time I tried to join their chat, Jane started talking to my wife again. The husband never tried to get involved. I brushed this off as Jane maybe being a bit shy around new people and forgot about it. Over the next month, Jessica and Jane would text constantly, have long phone calls at night, and meet up a couple of times a week for coffee or lunch. This didn't bother me, and I just thought that they were forming a close friendship. We then went out again for dinner, and the same thing happened, although Jane spoke to the whole group more this time, but she made a number of comments alluding to her being bisexual and her and husband being in some sort of open relationship. When we moved on to a bar, Jane sat across from my wife and started openly flirting with her. She would make suggestive comments, compliment her, and use any excuse to make physical contact with her, touching her hands, shoulders, etc. When we got home, I made a joke asking Jessica if she enjoyed her date with Jane. She looked confused and asked what I meant. I said that Jane had made me a bit uncomfortable with her flirting, but she said that's just how she is. I told her that I wasn't sure Jane just wanted to be friends and asked her to be careful. For reference, Jessica has never shown any real interest in women, and as far as I know, she is straight. She is also endearingly naive and will always see the best in people. The texting and calls continued, and Jessica started going over to Jane's apartment at least once a week and wouldn't come home until quite late. I was wary, but she would always tell me what they had done and watched, etc. After one of these visits, I asked what Jane's husband was up to and was slightly shocked to hear that he was away on a business trip. Apparently, he traveled a lot, and Jane didn't like being home alone. This came to a boiling point a few weeks ago when I took Jane's husband to play golf. We were supposed to go out for drinks and dinner after with other two guys, but they both had to cancel last minute. On the 10-minute drive back to my house, I could see Jane's husband texting Jane. Jane and Jessica were supposed to be going out for shopping and lunch, but when we arrived at my place, they both looked flustered, sitting at opposite ends of the couch. We made awkward small talk for a while, but I went into the bedroom. I noticed Jane's smartwatch sitting by the bed. They left quickly, and I decided it was time to talk to Jessica. I casually asked her what she bought at the mall and where they went for lunch. She said they decided to stay home instead because Jane had a headache. I asked her to be honest about what they had done, and she swore that they had just chatted all afternoon and they were just friends. I told her I was uncomfortable with a lot of things that have happened, but she tried to reassure me. I noticed later that the smartwatch was gone, but I didn't bring this up to Jessica. Since then, there have been no phone calls or messages while I was around, and Jessica seemed extra loving and attentive. She rarely brought up Jane, but last night she mentioned that she was going to a concert with Jane on Saturday and then would crash at her place. I said I wasn't comfortable with this and offered to pick her up instead. She got angry and said that I was acting controlling and crazy, then went to bed. We haven't spoken since, but am I overreacting here? Should I try to stop her from staying over on Saturday? I think I trust Jessica, but something is telling me that her relationship with Jane is not just as friends. Should I snoop? Best comments. It sounds like they were in the middle of it, and Jane's husband gave them a heads up that you were coming home early. He's helping his wife by keeping you busy so Jane and Jessica could cheat. He full-on knows it's happening. This did cross my mind, which is why I mentioned it. I don't really get on with the husband. He seems a bit weird to me, so I don't spend much time with him. I offered to take him golfing because he told me he doesn't have any friends, and I felt bad for him. At least twice in your narrative, I see where you let your wife know you are uncomfortable about this. My point is that she has been warned. I think it's time to snoop, and I think it's justified. She's telling without telling you. Contact an attorney, get your affairs in order, and prepare for what's coming because it's definitely coming. I'm not trying to get your spidey senses tingling harder than they are, but the three of them are playing you. Don't be shocked if he's actually a participant in their concert/sleepover event, as it sounds like he's already fully aware of what's happening between them. Update number one day after the last update. After reading your messages and comments, my head was a mess. I decided I needed some firm proof that Jessica was cheating before I confronted her. When I got home from work, Jessica had made dinner as normal and sat with me while I ate. I acted normally with her, and she caught me off guard by apologizing for her behavior the night before. She asked if I was still willing to pick her up, or she would even try to find someone selling a ticket if I wanted to come along. I asked her to try to find a ticket, and she seemed happy. The rest of the night was normal, and after we went to bed, I couldn't sleep. Around 1 a.m., Jessica was sound asleep, so I grabbed her phone and went to the bathroom. I unlocked it, we know each other's passcodes, and braced myself. I knew they texted each other on WhatsApp, so I started by trying to find any other messaging apps. I checked everywhere and used the trick someone recommended of looking at the battery usage to see the most used apps. I didn't find anything. Jessica is not into social media and doesn't use Instagram, Snapchat, etc. I also checked her browser history, emails, photos, call logs, deleted items, etc., and couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. I decided to check WhatsApp next and open the chat with Jane. I found hundreds of messages, sometimes up to 50 per day between them. Around 99% of them were completely normal, talking about TV shows, books, music, recipes, family, day-to-day life, etc. The other 1% might be a bit suspect. It included, Jane would often bring up spicy parts of books and TV shows and want to talk about it. This happened regularly, and Jessica would engage, but not in too much detail. One conversation about sex that Jane initiated, which came from a scene in a book. She was complaining that her husband is submissive and got quite explicit. Jessica shared a bit too much about our sex life, but nothing outrageous, and she was very complimentary about me. Jane replied she was jealous in a joking way with some emojis. Jane casually mentioned that she had a friend over a few times when Jessica asked what she was up to. Jessica's replies were always along the lines of have fun. Jane would complain about her husband a lot and ask about our relationship. Again, Jessica was complimentary and didn't say anything particularly negative about me. Jane sent Jessica a link to a sex toy asking for her opinion. Jessica replied, "Oh yeah, I have one of those, it's great." There were no nudes or anything pointing towards them having its sex. Nothing had been deleted. I checked some of the chats with her other friends, and they were very similar. What was most concerning was the way which Jane texted Jessica. She would always initiate the conversation and follow up 3 to 4 times until Jessica responded. She would then start calling if she didn't respond. There were also a few messages where Jane's tone changed when Jessica wouldn't reply. She would become less friendly and cold. Also, when Jane asked Jessica to do something together, there was always a subtle guilt trip added, like she didn't want to go alone because of social anxiety. She was scared being home by herself, etc. The messages and calls slowed down in the last few weeks because they were both complaining about being busy and Jane had been out of town. Even though I didn't find the smoking gun I was looking for, it's clear that Jane and her weird husband are bad news for our marriage. We will be having a come-to-Jesus conversation tonight where I will get the truth because Jessica is a terrible liar. If nothing more has happened, I will make it clear that divorce is still on the table if these creeps are not permanently and immediately removed from our lives. Best comments. Jane is definitely trying to initiate an affair. It often starts with oversharing details and complaints about the relationship. Kudos to Jessica for not partaking in that. Still, the last post raised some serious red flags. I hope you can have those addressed. Thanks. I was relieved to see Jessica saying positive things about me in her private conversations. My plan for tonight is to confront her about all of my suspicions. In what way does any of the things he uncovered in this update differ from normal girls' talk? I suspect something also, but this update shows nothing out of the ordinary. They don't, and that's what left me a bit confused and frankly wasn't what I was expecting. I'm glad that I didn't find anything too out of pocket, as I said. I'm more concerned about the way in which Jane seems to be pursuing Jessica. Jane is a train wreck. She's the example of misery wants company. Update number 2, 2 days after the last update. First of all, my original post was not intended to cover all of the things that led to me being suspicious of Jessica's relationship with Jane. There were a number of other factors, for example, Jessica prioritizing communicating and spending time with Jane over me. Jessica not talking about Jane like she did with her other friends, etc. We did talk about most of this at the time because, believe it or not, we do have good and regular communication. Now on to the update. Jessica came home on Friday and we sat down to talk after dinner. This was not a big showdown, but just a normal conversation that lasted many hours. Here is a summary. Jessica originally loved spending time with Jane, but became too intense and weird for her a few months ago. She feels Jane is too needy and controlling, but didn't want to lose her only close friend in this city. Jessica knows that Jane has a crush on her, but made it clear that she was happily married and straight. She should have told me about this, but knew that I wouldn't be okay with it. Nothing physical happened between them. Jane tried to initiate physical contact in a playful way and made suggestive comments about Jessica, her body, etc. Jessica shut this down. Jessica told me that she wanted to cut down contact with Jane and focus more on our relationship and spending time with a new friend she has made. As for my concerns, here is Jessica's explanation. Jane's attitude towards me. Apparently, she doesn't like most men and treats her husband terribly. The flustered and awkward situation when I came home from golf. Jane was showing Jessica some spicy scenes from a new TV show. They didn't realize we were coming back early and switched the TV off as we came through the door. The watch. Jane was going to borrow a dress for a wedding and went into our bedroom to try some on. Jessica assumed she took it off, and when she saw it, she put it in her bag to give it back to her later. Jessica's reaction when I asked her not to crash at Jane's apartment. Apparently, Jane had planned a girls' night after, and Jessica thought she would get angry if she canceled. I also told Jessica that I snooped on her phone. She was initially angry, but understood why I did it and forgave me. We both apologized to each other and went to bed. I managed to get a ticket for the concert and went with Jessica and Jane last night. Jane made some thinly veiled comments / jokes about me being their chaperone, etc., but I laughed it off. We met another couple there, and I ended up hanging out with the other husband while the ladies danced, etc. Long story short, we are good. I trust my wife, and we had a long conversation about boundaries, etc. Thanks to all of you that provided constructive / helpful comments, but given a number of insults and offensive messages I've received, I won't be coming to Reddit for advice again anytime soon. Best comments. They didn't realize we were coming back early and switched the TV off as we came through the door. I thought you said that Jane's husband was texting her as you guys are going home for golfing. He didn't tell her you guys were on your way? Anyway, if you choose to trust her and move past it, then good luck. I just hope some truths don't get exposed in the future. Jessica said that Jane never mentioned that we were on our way back. She got startled when she heard the door opening with some dirty scene playing loudly on the TV and quickly switched it off. We spoke about this for about 15 minutes, and she told me about the show, what scene it was, what she was thinking, etc. She was mostly embarrassed because she didn't want to watch it in the first place. You do realize that putting this scene on was probably a way to turn your wife on, so she can get her in bed.